I can give a little background on myself too to kick it off, Eric.
Yeah, perfect. All right, Evan, take us
Great.
away.
Thanks everyone
Give
for
us
the
your background.
backgrounds. I was marking the series and stages and sizes, and yeah, I feel like that does have a lot of relevance. I started in freelancing, then tiny agency and social media marketing, and then startup that was services that shifted to SaaS and in AI way before it was cool. And that flopped because it wasn't cool yet. That's how I accrue the impact of that. Then Convoy Unicorn, paid web SEO, and then Airwallex Unicorn growth marketing for US, and then Syncery Series A growth marketing, and then Service Bell head of marketing, tiny 12-person team. Uh, and now I'm looking at two. I'm deciding between two companies that are both that are kind of different ones, like PE. So good to make connections here. Maybe I can hand whichever role I don't take to someone here who seems like a fit. One's like big, 80 million, and one is Series A. And I do think what I'm about to share has a lot of applicability across stages and sizes. I was talking about a CRO of a $750 million company about it. RevOps at Carta, Andy Mowat is a big believer in this framework. Chief of staff at ETB, at Zywave, these big companies. Because essentially, if you think about like negative space, right, like limiting the unknowns through experimentation and aligning an organization around focused projects that deliver focused results, this is really a tool for that. This is a framework that I use to get sales and marketing working together, to get leadership XLT tuned into impact that I'm driving, so that I don't just get randomly let go because marketing is amorphous and vague and all that stuff, which has definitely happened to me. Um, and also, just I've worked with a lot of startups that have either issues with problem market fit or message market fit or product market fit or some kind of fit problem. And most of the time, more conversations with your market solves that issue. Uh, so I'll try to be quick going through the framework. Uh, and Eric, I can go to 1:15 now if that's the time slot everyone's got booked for this. But how about I do 10 minutes of talking through things and then open it up from there?
Sounds great.
Cool. Okay, this whiteboard is not up to date. Can everyone see my hand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over here.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So expectation setting, this will absolutely cover. I will talk about how reporting on experiments becomes like the main thing that I actually do from a reporting standpoint, and how I manage it closely, how hard it is to do in CRM, and so I do it in Airtable. But don't be intimidated by that idea. You can do it in a Google Sheet. That's where I started. So story time. I started off doing like A/B testing for big brands, Esri, Haibu, Kodak, Xerox. Xerox wanted to be a SaaS company, and so we created a fake brand, White Rhino. They never actually ran with being a SaaS company, which is a bummer. But we basically ran like A/B testing, multivariate testing campaigns on social with this fake brand, right? We basically like tested messages to a survey, all that stuff, very much like market researchy, but more hands-on. And that's kind of how I pitched it. I was like, look, what if you gathered your own data about people's responses to different positioning, messaging, product offerings, that kind of thing? And then at Airwallex, I ran into a problem that required similar thinking, sort of first principles approach to solving for unknowns. When they launched in the US, it's a cross-border fintech international payments thing. So basically the value prop for Airwallex is you pay less on foreign exchange fees in payments as a business. And I kind of pointed out to the CEO, reported a skip level to him, like, you don't really have many businesses here who that applies to. You can build a large e-commerce business and sell only to the US and Canada, and it doesn't really matter with Canada as far as the fees. So I don't really think you have product market fit here. And he disagreed naturally, hadn't done any research before launching. And so I said, okay, I will take disgruntled AE demoted on a PIP to SDR, work closely with him by validated phone data, and I'll talk more about that in a second. and he will cold call 8 different industries, right? And so literally we create a spreadsheet that's like, 8 rows, right? Um, and we will track everything for each row. We will track number of connects, conversations, positive dispositions, referrals, meetings booked, opportunities created, revenue won, time to value, and the whole thing per vertical. So really, really easy with this like closely managed phone approach to determine which industries were responding well and which were not. And it was at the industry level. Basically, the organization, the team, even Jack, the CEO, said, like, I think these 8 industries all are good fits for Airwallex. And so we disqualified over the course of 4 months 5 of those industries. Only 3 produced meetings, but within 2 months he was booking a meeting a day, and within 2 more months he was booking 5 meetings a day. Still the single most productive SDR I've ever heard of. And it was all through the phone. He was dialing for 2 to 4 hours a day. The guy had a pretty sweet gig. But ultimately, CEO wanted hockey stick growth. He wanted PLG. So we're like, oh, this isn't a fit. Like, I can build you a sales led motion, but I don't think you have much PLG business case here in the US. But the method now has become like the main thing I pitch myself on in interviews. I talk about experimentation. I talk about this framework. And the premise that I use is that most teams, and this is true even in large organizations, but I'll start off talking about founder-led sales and the evolution as organizations grow. Founder-led sales, FLS, works really well, and founders love it because the feedback loop is really tight, right? You have a conversation with a prospect, and then inside of an hour, you're thinking, should I change the product, right? Should I reposition the messaging? And that can be dangerous, but it's also super valuable. Good founders know how to collect a lot of feedback before they pivot, right? And are humble enough to listen. And that's why you get such good optimizations of products in the early days. But we've all seen how big companies really struggle, not only to listen, but then even if they get feedback, to like respond to it. When most founders hit Series A, the first thing they do, and even in seed stage, is hire a CRO. And then eventually, maybe early on, depending on the business model, a CMO of some kind, whether head of marketing or head of growth or whatever. All of a sudden, you're scaling GTM. So we'll call this like the scaled loop over here. And your feedback loop goes from daily to 6 to 12 months, right? And you see this in the way conversations go. Hey, CRO, you said this would work. You said this targeting would work. This ICP would work. This model would work. This team would work. This event would work. This campaign would work. And it didn't. But you're not getting that visibility as a founder into how poorly things are going, because you put trust in the person and they built this big engine for you around a couple of hypotheses. You're not getting insight into the failure until it's way too late. So my proposal is 3 intermediary loops to essentially proliferate the founder's brain out 1 degree further each time. The first is cold calling, and I bring that up because it is easily the cheapest way I can get conversations with any market today. Like if you said, hey, Evan, we have 100 accounts that we want to know about. We want to know about this segment, and so let's build an account list, which doesn't take much time, right? I imagine we're all decent at that. If that's not a fair assumption, I apologize. But basically, we build an account list inside of an hour. We can have contact data, mobile waterfalls, and then run validation on the phone data. And I'll talk about that again in a second. And that will give us the people who do pick up the phone. We can call them tomorrow. So I've done this like 3 times, 4 times I've been unemployed for a month now, consulting arrangements. And even with like heads of data or heads of IT or heads of engineering, all the people they say you shouldn't cold call, they're not getting cold called. It's beautiful. The heads of the engineering people are so confused about a cold call finally hitting them that they think we're calling from their own company. We've had 2 different people this week who were like, are you affiliated with us? Like, and they think we want to buy their product. We're like, no, it's the inverse. We want to sell you something. Isn't that nice? But with a good caller on the phone, like I've actually worked on becoming a cold caller myself, but with a good caller on the phone, good tone, ability to like navigate, use fake stumbling to get people to feel like they're the owner of the conversation. You're basically giving the recipient power in the conversation. You can get good conversations like inside of a day. And and I look across all the tools in my tool belt, from SEO to paid media to LinkedIn outreach. LinkedIn outreach can be good, but it's hard cold, and there's all these rate limits and stuff. With a good dialer, with good phone deliverability, you can scale that really, really, really rapidly. I can pause for questions, Eric, or I can just keep going through the framework.
Does anyone have
questions? You're cruising.
I can do like a full super detailed on how to do the phone too, but maybe that's better as a follow-up.
Yeah, let's go. Let's close the second two. This is great, by the way. I'm like loving this. I hope everyone else is. Let's close the second two, and then we can double click and editing.
The second loop is asynchronous sales channels. Now, most people actually start here. Most businesses I've been part of for the last 5 years have been myopically focused on automated email and social channels. Now, automated email, as many of you I'm sure are aware, is becoming harder and harder and harder, basically because Google and Yahoo don't want spam. And it makes sense. There's no way for legal imposition to protect inboxes. So AI is just coming on top of Spamageddon from an email standpoint to make it even cheaper, easier, faster to send tons of emails. And that's a problem. The channel saturation problem is real. And we all know this from things like social and advertising. Like a channel gets popular, LinkedIn ads, right? It used to be $4 a click. Now it's 20, 30, right? For cold clicks. So I only recommend scaling to async sales channels when, and I say async meaning asynchronous, meaning it's not a live conversation. Because the other reason cold calling is valuable is like the research aspect, taking the recordings of real conversations between humans, and I pull them out with webhooks, and ChatGPT taught me how to do all this. What a crazy world we live in, and like parse the conversation out into themes and insights and share those with the leadership team. They can see every transcript, every recording, every disposition. The asynchronous channels you can only optimize, in my view and my experience, when you know what messages are resonating and clicking, and what even terminology, right? Like what's going to go into a subject line. Sure, I can A/B test subject lines, but I'm still dealing within the sort of closed circuit of my assumptions about what a good subject line or good ad is. So I'd rather go get verbatims from prospects, words they're using, how they describe the problem. Oh, that's like this. Whatever this is absolutely my next subject line test, right? The moment it clicks for them. And then from there, scaling out to ABM retargeting, so like LinkedIn ads layer to get the nice filtering on the target accounts, and then retargeting on Quora, Reddit, TikTok if it still exists in a month, etc. All the places where retargeting is super cheap, and on the pixel that's filtered by UTM to traffic that I know is from those accounts. That's when I'm running that kind of thing. ABM landing pages if you're dealing with like high ticket, high ACV stuff. And so the way this works is like, let's say, experiment A gets to cold calling phase, kind of flops. So we stop it, right? And everyone knows, they see in the planning template, like, oh, here's the conversations we had. It wasn't a good fit with the prospect. Didn't fit at all. Conversation B goes through cold calling, succeeds after a couple of weeks. Hey, we should scale this out. Usually I'll bring in a vendor to run email, so I don't have to own the email infrastructure for cold outbound because it's a nightmare. But the social piece I can execute myself or with SDRs. And then, but let's say it fails at that point. It just doesn't get the kind of response rates we need. And then experiment C goes all the way to ABM. If you succeed at this point, now you know where we're spending. We're going to events, conferences around a segment, but only after we've really graduated a hypothesis. And this could be industry, could be persona, it could be like a signal, like for one client, high growth AI startups is a segment they're testing. So I kind of group that as like a signal, right? So we did all this scraping around news and growth velocity to get them a list of about 120 accounts that fit that profile, and we're testing that as a dedicated experiment, right? Yeah, and then I've got some Airtable stuff that I can show you guys for how this actually gets laid out and formatted, if that's useful. Really briefly.
So these are like stacked on top of each other, right? Like you're just, once you have cold calling working,
yeah,
you keep that working, and then you're layering on, and then you're layering on it.
And yeah, there's so many things we could talk about in the realm of like nurture concepts here too, where like why aren't SDRs becoming known quantities within their market? People who call again once a month, once you have a validated number and you're just asking where you're at with the priorities. The other thing we do is like research completion. So you ask like, who are you using today? When do you renew? And who owns this? Who's the like the line item owner, right? Um, and then 3 months out from renewal month, you're calling in and you're trying to convert. Hey, we just want to throw our hat in the ring. Want to make sure you're evaluating on the options. Don't want you to just auto renew with that other client or that other vendor. Cold calling is super powerful for that relationship building dynamic, but then also they can proliferate and become much more strategic. So basically, you split SDR time up into follow up and nurture versus experimentation based prospecting.
Love it. All right. Well, I would love to see this, in Airtable or more like stuff you can share. But before that, I wonder if anyone has questions about at kind of this level, anything else that will be helpful to double click into.
No, same. I just wanted to see how you like systematize it.
Yeah, that's definitely the hardest part. Ultimately, what we're talking about. Can you give me sharing permissions, Eric?
Yes.
Ultimately,
can I ask a question before we jump into this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you saying that your buyers both answer their cell phone from an unknown number and are on TikTok?
Yeah. Oh, not always necessarily, but the retargeting, beautiful piece about retargeting once you filter through the LinkedIn traffic first is you're only paying once the right people see it. So you're paying almost nothing most days, and then all of a sudden your random CMO who happens to just create a TikTok account is seeing a hilarious video ad from yours truly. Okay. Now the phone piece. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about phone validation. So phone data has been junk for a while. Upsell.io with a C is a new vendor. The guy he built, Mark Bedard built the database for ZoomInfo, the phone database, and now produces his own product. So incredibly good upstream data, 10 to 15% connect rates on average on the raw data, but that's very rare. Most data, Cognizant, ZoomInfo, Seamless, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. ZoomInfo is a little bit better, like 6% connect rates, because they source their own via DiscoverOrg. When they acquire DiscoverOrg, it's basically a calling shop of 200 people who dial in and validate numbers. But it's still not great. But essentially, there's another vendor I put in the mix. There's two, TitanX and SureConnect. And they both basically, not as you, but as a service, call into numbers you give them, confirm that it's the right person, and whether or not they pick up the phone. So a P1 is someone who picks up the phone 20 to 30% of the time. So you call a P1 list 5 times over 10 days, and you get 20 to 30% connect rate consistently with any persona. I have not seen it like go below. The P2s are like, this is the right number, you should leave a voicemail. Like they won't pick up. And here's the thing, almost everyone, and in one of my recent hiring conversations, the CRO was like, I don't pick up the phone and I'm our ICP. So how are you saying this works? Well, I asked him, do you read voicemail transcripts? They said, yeah, I'll screen them, scan them. I was like, well, good. If someone calls in and clearly articulates our company name, that's a website visit waiting to happen, right? And then we're using tools like Koala or Warmly or what have you to detect the companies when they land on the site. And in the vast expanse of ABM orchestration, which is no small feat, that's really valuable to look at. Like, here companies we're calling, here they're hitting the site, now we're running ads against them. That whole looping capability builds itself out from there. So the validation piece, it's not cheap necessarily. Some of it can happen in Clay. With SureConnect, TitanX will be in Clay eventually, but it's very, very powerful for you give an SDR who's been hating the phone or never used the phone or struggling with the phone a list of P1s from a validated data set, and all of a sudden they're having more conversations than they used to in a month inside of a couple of days. So they start to learn, they start to know their market, they become a resource, a creative function in GTM as well. Good question though. Thank you for reminding me about the phone. The phone data. Yeah, I hear this all the time. Like, I don't answer the phone. Are you sure people still do? And when I'm feeling feisty, I'll say something like, your sample size of one, right? Like, you are not your market. But any channel suffers from deliverability, let's call it, right? Email, what percentage of the market actually responds to email behaviorally? 10 to 15%. It's about the same for the percentage of the market that actually picks up cold calls. So we're basically just trying to play the odds wherever we can as marketers, right? Yeah. So the first thing I go through as an exercise, did this a lot with Convoy. The CMO said like, hey, digital team, we don't know what we're doing for this year. And this was January of the year. Can you guys make a plan? And so I had the whole org create like 40 possible experiments we could run. And then we used RICE scoring, reach, impact, confidence, effort. Reach is like highest number of users, customers, audience, or impact, or are affected. Impact is like how big of a gain for them is it if, or for us is it if we pull this experiment off. Confidence is how high we think we'll be able to deploy the experiment, and effort is how much work is it, time, money, whatever. Effort is the negative, so it's the denominator, so it's reach plus impact plus confidence divided by effort gives you RICE score. And the beauty of this approach is we can't argue about the final score. We can argue all day long about like, I actually don't think that's got that big of an impact. I actually don't think I'm that confident about running that, right? We had like 20 different people's opinions documented as scores 1 to 4 at Convoy. It was a bit of a mess, but ultimately we didn't argue with the algorithm, and we ended up running LinkedIn ads into the second most productive creator of SQLs for the company. So there's a few types of experiments here, right? Persona, signal, vertical, and there's probably other kinds I haven't thought of that much, or what have you. I usually see persona for companies that are horizontal, like a vendor I work with that sells embedded integration software, sells to pretty much any SaaS company, right? So they're experimenting on personas. But you could also experiment on vertical, like Airwallex did. If you're verticalized, right? Matt, you mentioned you've got a vertical, so you're probably experimenting on like seniority of ways to get referred in. You probably have tons of other ideas of your own, maybe stage, size. Yeah. Did you want to say something, Matt?
No, I was going to say size for us is pivotal, just because there's such dramatic different sizes of bookkeeping practices.
Yeah. The other tool this becomes is like when your founder or CEO says something like, hey, Matt, what about this? You're like, that's not a small thing. You have to decide, do I go execute on it? Do I push back? Do I define it? I drop it into the experiment list and we score it, and we see how it stacks up against the experiments we're running. And then, does it make sense to try to reprioritize things in this framework? From there, you're mapping into execution, where you're tracking in the phone experiment, right? Conversations, positive dispositions, research complete, where you've got the data on the account, meetings booked, SQLs, ops created, closed one, and onboarded customers. And you can do a lot more. You could do the contract value inside that segment. This stuff I pull into Airtable out of CRM, right? So that I can like see it nice and clean in the table, which is not easy. Particularly because this way I can actually have all the contacts that we're prospecting and all the segments and the actual list files just in one view. And the way Airtable works, just for a quick, like the reason I pick Airtable for this is if I say, oh, this list is attached with this experiment, then I can link between the records. Doesn't usually take this long to load.
While that loads, how frequently are you updating the data? I feel like pulling the data from Salesforce and then copying it into this is a pretty tedious task.
Totally. I try to automate it, right? So dialers usually will have their own API or their own, reporting. Notice though, like, so phone burner is what I'm using in consulting right now, and they don't actually have good reporting. So I actually use a webhook on the dispositions to pull out number of conversations, recordings, positive dispositions, and and that all goes to Clay and then comes to here automatically. So with honestly, I just asked ChatGPT how to build this. Like it,
yeah, okay.
Cool. I didn't know. It taught me Python code too for it. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I think ultimately, like, you have to decide how all in you are on a system like this. So let's say I have a list and it's the CMO. It's my CMO list V1, right? And it's actual attach the file or something. You know, down wherever attachment is. I missed it. So I'd load the file in here and then I'd have this associated. So now when I go back to prioritization, I have the actual list view ready to go here. You don't have to use Airtable. You can use a Google Sheet to do the same thing, but I had a harder time automating. Well, you could use coefficient.io if you guys are familiar. Like, really love that tool for pulling out data from CRM really seamlessly into spreadsheets. That's probably, Matt, that's probably the simplest way to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
Because then you could do.
We use coefficient, and it's like kind of crazy how helpful it is. From trying to do that with Zapier or personally.
Yeah. That's the gist.
Okay, I have one kind of question. So your experiments are like the rows in the spreadsheet that you're pushing through the same channels, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like different segments or different people that you're targeting with different messaging to get it to click. Once it clicks, it pushes through these kind of channels. Yeah. So that makes a bunch of sense as a way to like organize what you're working on in the team. Do you have any thoughts on like all those marketing ideas that come up that are either like, hey, this campaign idea, which is just like an interesting campaign idea, right? Like it could be to multiple different personas or just to one that may be still in like the cold calling part of this. Or like a new channel idea. So you're like, you know, I think, well, there aren't that many new channels, but kind of like
could be a new ad channel, could be a new
jumping straight to an ad format or like a micro play within, something like that. So I guess those types of things, like how do you kind of fit those in?
I think the trick is with experimenting on channels. I'd probably recommend like, pick 3 like audience segments to experiment within the channel, because often channels don't DQ themselves entirely, right? Like an audience effort within a channel would. Right. So let's say I wanted to know if my audience was on TikTok. I would set up TikTok on retargeting filtered from LinkedIn traffic, and then I would see over time that I'm not getting any clicks on TikTok, and I would just say, well, don't even bother. Like, let's just not run anything there.
Wait, sorry. This is probably a stupid question, but maybe someone else who watching this recording or here has it. How do you set up retargeting and filter out people who come from?
Yeah, most retargeting
LinkedIn
offerings have an option to filter on UTM. So
so
you run the ads on LinkedIn with UTMs you're planning on using retargeting. Right. So I usually set up 3 waterfall, like a RTGT1 on UTM term. I use UTM term as like an audience segment when it's not a SEM thing. And then RTGT2 would be traffic coming back from one of these other platforms. You know, but it's pre-filtered. So I use RTGT1 to tell TikTok, Quora, Reddit, etc., that I only want to send ads to my traffic with this UTM parameter present.
And what are the providers that you like using for that?
I mean, there's kind of you can even do this with CTV now, Mountain, Vibe, Tatari. You can do retargeting from the website to smart TV. So you picture like a video to your enterprise buyers, like from your B2B brand. That's pretty cool. But yeah, Quora and Reddit are huge. If you notice, most Google searches are landing in those now because Google considers them non-threatening, right? That's big. Reddit gets a ridiculous amount of traffic, and people end up there even when they're not Reddit users all the time. Kind of like how Twitter used to be before someone decided to gate everything.
Okay, thanks for the sidebar. That's helpful.
Yeah, it's all good. Good question.
All right.
Does anyone here run SDR teams or heavily influence?
We work closely with our SDRs, but they report up to sales.
Yeah. Do they use the phone much?
Probably half and half. The ones that use the phone perform better than the ones that are just email.
Yeah, for sure. Kendall, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I manage our SDR team and we see a ton of success on the phone.
Yeah. Honestly, I think 2025 is going to be huge for the phone because it's the only legally protected from AI channel for sales left, right? Like social deepfakes are going to come. Fake profiles are already here. People are going to make fake historical backgrounds for fake image sets of fake things left and right. So social platforms are going to have a harder and harder time moderating. And then email we talked about earlier, but yeah, the phone is basically going to be the one thing that's got a linear relationship to number of people dialing and number of buyers. Yeah. Favorite dialers? Anybody got a favorite dialer they love? No. I love sitting closely with SDRs and like actually walking them through this process. The thing for SDRs is their quality of life kind of sucks, right? The job is pretty shitty. So by bringing them into an experiment framework, they actually get to be part of failure in a productive manner. Fail fast, fail cheap is what we do. Marketers, we're pretty good at this idea, right? And we know how to sell it, position it, and train on it. But sales teams are like, hey, here's a quota, do or die, right? That sucks. So, and it also leads to lower performance because they get jaded, lonely, et cetera. Bringing them this into the experiment framework, sitting with them in the sales floors, the virtual dialing rooms, right? That kind of stuff. And talking with them through like why it's working, why it's not. Is it them or is it the audience? So, helping debug the top of the funnel holistically. It also gives me tons of intel for my asynchronous efforts with ads and all that stuff, right? Yeah. Cool. Well, not rocket science, just hard to do.
This is great. This is I love the detail of this. I love that you don't see many things like this. And I love that it was all baked in like real experience, clearly. So excited for all of us to take pieces of this, implement it, and come back
the hard way from situations where I had to either prove we were doing something smart or leave.
Right. Yeah. All right, sweet. Well, if anyone has questions about the framework itself, we can go into that. If not, we can spend some time just talking shop about general startup marketing questions. If anyone has something that you're like struggling with right now or trying to figure out or want some feedback on.
I do have some general questions.
Let's do it.
For context, Keepers at like 7 million in ARR. We went through YC a couple years ago. Our founders are smart and young. And almost as a result, I think they think that they could sort of do marketing like while they sleep. And so I feel like we've all sort of experienced this where they're like, hey, I've got an idea. Why don't you, and I always use the like whimsical example of like put a billboard on the moon. Wouldn't that be awesome? How, like you've done this a handful of times. How do you sort of say like, hey, that's a nice idea, but we're like already like I already have a list of things I'm doing. Like that is a distraction. How do you handle
I
those
broker the relationship entirely through the lens of that experiment list, that prioritization piece. Because if they want to unseat priorities that are things that are in flight, they're my boss, but it's going to hurt, right? And they understand pivoting and thrash, I hope, though I've been with founders who haven't. And that becomes the main way I interact with my superiors is here's the list. You first take a look at it before we even add it and score it. And then after we add it and score it, does it really present? Because the moon in that analogy, right? Like that's a 4 confidence effort, and effort destroys priorities. Like if it's a high effort, it gets ranked way lowly, which they might argue with, but you're gonna give me more budget, more resource to pull off the billboard on the moon, then we can have a conversation, right? Then it lowers the effort, right? Yeah.
Anybody else have anything to add to that as well? I'm curious to hear from everybody.
That's a good question.
I'll share this is just we just have a Trello board that's like all of the marketing projects. And it goes from backlog to, there's like backlog discuss or to prioritize, and then considering, and then committed, and then in progress. And then I have a meeting every Monday, and we're like, what are we working on? And then it's like we're sitting on the same side of the table with like this Trello board on the other side, and we're like, well, I mean, what do we want to move around? Like there's a set amount of things, we can get done. So that's been a helpful like tactical thing. And then the second part of that is like whenever there's a new idea, it's just like immediately like, let's add that to the backlog, talk about it on Monday. Add it to the backlog, talk about it on Monday. Like never not add something to the backlog, which is A, helpful because you have this whole backlog of like really good marketing ideas that are cool, but B, because it like trains everyone to be like, we're talking about this in a structured way, like on Monday when we have context as to what everything else is that we're working on. So I don't know, that's been helpful for me.
It's cool. All right, I've monopolized enough time. Somebody else.
Well, Matt,
story as old as time.
Say that again, Evan.
What do you do to handle it right now?
In theory, I try to do what you do. I just don't have like as built out of a list of like clear experiments. We use Notion as our project management tool, and I sort of put tasks on Notion. I think we would probably score them differently, where I might score something really high and they might score something low, and they might score something low and I might score something high. So then we sort of debate whether like trying to go viral on TikTok is like a good use of my time.
I really hope that's not a real one. Yeah,
that is in fact a real one, which feels great. But
viral
anyway,
marketing was dead for a while. I think it might be back.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel like I'm handling the conversations pretty well, where we basically say we've got this finite amount of resources, and I would rather pursue things that we're very confident will work, rather than take these like big swings that we'll likely miss.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's very aligned with how I feel about it too, right? It's like that's why effort destroys the prioritization, because you don't get many high effort initiatives in a year. You get maybe 2 or 3. You get a ton of small effort ones, and if you can get insights out of those, then that's worth it for sure. Yeah.
Evan, have you ever been in a situation where you have all these experiments planned, and then your budget gets slashed, and how you have pivoted when that happens? And it's less of a culture of experimentation, and it turns into more of a culture of keeping the lights on. I think that's something we could all learn from, how things have gone the past few years.
Yeah, Syncery, that happened. They had 2 riffs. I survived both barely. But I took over SDR team after the second riff, and we actually had a ton of success, because I made my job. I became an SDR, and I just sat with them and like did their job with them, and together we figured out sort of the first principles problem of like persona and all this stuff. And there's a lot of product market fit things there, but I think the phone is a good place to go, because it doesn't take much budget, and those validation, like if you use Clay and you waterfall on LinkedIn profiles to find the mobile number, then you do the Sure Connect validation in a few $100 a month license, you're getting incredibly good data. And then with the dialer, they're going and calling and having conversations. And so pipeline resuscitation, the other way I've done it is use like Pitchfire or Leader Pro or some of these tools for like brokering meetings, but I have mixed success there, because it's kind of like gift card campaigns. Like you get people who just want to take a demo and that sort of thing. But I think marketing leaning into SDR very heavily and saying like, look, I'm going to do LinkedIn outreach with you. I'm going to, especially if your ICP is at all related to a knowledge set you have, and I'm going to help you succeed with a channel that will get you conversations. I think I think going into incubation mode, I always use gardening as an analogy, right? Like your plant is dying, right? What do? You take it inside and you like stay really close to it. You watch it every day, multiple times a day. You feel the soil, And to me, like sitting with SDRs and even cold calling myself or whatever it is, right, to just have more conversations in order to build a case for getting budget back if needed and scale things up. Like paid, I can't do it all with confidence in those situations because it's do or die. It's like, okay, this is your last $20,000 ever to spend, and you're like, well, I'm not going to do that. Like that's just it's like gambling the house, you know. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. But I'm curious if anyone else has experienced the same.
No, that's super helpful.
That's not the situation you're in right now, is it? I hope.
Could be.
Could be. Unrecordedly. I shouldn't have asked. I apologize. Yeah. That's tough. I think I've seen similar type things happen where like the product pivots and everything sucks. Like and that can really tank productivity on typical channels, and I get responses like, Evan, why aren't we hitting forecasts? You're not running ads. Like, yeah, because people are having a bad experience. Like I don't want to throw customers through a meat grinder, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question around these lines. It just is coming up. Has anyone here been in a situation where like stuff is clearly not working? They're doing layoffs or like cutting budgets, like cultural shit. You're like, my boss is just stupid. Like he doesn't get it. Like, has anyone been in a situation like that and then it has like turned around and like started working again?
No.
I keep finding like every time someone, what's that?
The first has happened, but it's never turned around for me.
Yeah, because I keep hearing these like types of things, and from my like limited experience and then talking to other people, like it seems like the real solution is almost always like go find a company where the underlying root cause isn't happening, which is like the thing's not working.
I mean, a lot of it is founder culture, right? Like the culture at the top, humility, taking ownership. If that's not there, then and leaning in and solving problems rather than just like, why does my sales team suck? Why is marketing not getting it? I usually find there is no way to solve that situation if that's the attitude that the leadership has. And I've been in several of those situations. The Airwallex example I don't mind sharing is absolutely what happened there. I basically developed an SDR. I don't know how he got so productive, and it still wasn't good enough, you know, because he had a certain expectation that wasn't realistic. And yeah, Ben, you came off mute. You have a thought?
I was just gonna say that the Y Combinator thing with the founders doing marketing, I've run into that a couple of times where it's like a culture, a common theme I've seen from startups coming out of YC, where and it's true, if they put in the work, they can learn how to do marketing. But I feel like there's like they're kind of coasting on that where it's you know, part of what we say as being, you know, YC alumni is that founders can do marketing, but they don't make the effort to actually do it. I just wanted to say I've seen that a couple of times.
Good point.
That makes sense. Yes. Usually I've had to find a new job when that situation presents itself, Eric.
It's just crazy how many of these things loop back to culture and the company working. Like Damien Voida said this, and he's like, marketing is multiplicative and you can't multiply by zero. And it's like so true. Like, and it's it's the product, but also the company.
Yeah.
Around like everything kind of has to be like pretty good, like product, company / business model / cap table stuff, and then culture. Like all have to be good for like any of your marketing stuff to actually, you know, work well or continue to justify itself.
Sorry. In my last role, I prioritized product over people, thinking that would be fine. Like I didn't do enough vetting of people, but now I'm very much like, are the people the right fit? And then the product, because like if the people are good, we can figure it out, at least enough to pivot the business or tune things up or fix things, but not the other way around for sure.
And enough
That's
for
kind of
like the mental sanity to be maintained if it's not working. Because they're not like gaslighting you into saying, you know, this isn't working.
Yeah.
They're like on the same team as you.
Has
All right,
anyone read the
Ben.
book Extreme Ownership? If you can get over the bro-ish Navy SEAL stuff, which, you know, neither here nor there, right? It's just not for everyone. Uh, Incredibly good book with basically humility of framework, or a framework of humility as the number one trait to have as a leader, and very convicting and challenging for me to like figure out how to take ownership even in those situations. Like, I should have vetted you further. I should have seen this sooner, right? Like I should have had a discipline in place, which is why I use this now to really prove or disprove the hypotheses that you're spitting out every week, so that we together can align that, like, hey, there isn't actually a working test. So what does that tell us about the market? Are we just wrong about the fundamental assumptions of who needs this and how much they will pay? I'm gonna have a cry fest after this. Yeah.
Yeah. Ben, are you gonna say something?
yeah, I wanted to point out, you were talking about keeping focus on the people, like getting the right people in place, which is like totally consistent with the methodology of starting off with cold calling, starting a program with cold calling, because you're on the one side, you're like, it's the people you work with and count on, but and on the cold calling side, it's the people that are going to be buying your stuff.
Yeah, true.
And the more time you spend at that level, really at all stages, the better the marketing can be. Like if you can afford all the tools, you know, the visibles and the Sixth Sense and all of the expensive stuff, it's a waste of money if you don't have those foundational, like, human principles in place
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, Reclaiming Conversation, book by Sherry Turkle, the MIT researcher, is really what like impassioned me about marketing as scaling conversations. You're totally right. Like ultimately, so her main point is the digital asynchronous mode of communication gives us a sense of community. You know, people on LinkedIn say like, "Hey, community." And you're like, that's not your community. That's just a bunch of people scrolling through their internets. Like her point is like we have a sense of community connection and relationship rather than actual community connection and relationship way too often now. So put down the phone, connect with your family, connect with your friends, connect with, in this case, your buyers, right? I think especially in the AI era, the more we've developed strong human connections across bridges and as people, and that's why I think SDR nurture via the phone is huge, because imagine building relationships with your TAM over the course of a year. Eventually, they'll all know about you, and you'll be in the mix next time the deal comes along. Yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah, Evan.
It's also,
Oh, sorry. Go for it.
I was just gonna say that your last point is also really good, if you're working with SDRs who are discouraged by being SDRs. Like, if you spend the time talking to your market and spend that time dialing and you know, connecting with the people that you're selling to, that sets you up to go literally anywhere in the company or in the industry after that, because you can't replicate that by
Yeah,
you know any other method, really.
100%. Yeah, totally true.
Yeah, I was going to share that something that's worked really well for us is to cold call right before a key event for our key personas and within our ICP, and actually have a conversation about like, hey, let's meet up at this event. It's way more effective, we found, than just doing like a cold call out of the blue. And we used that tactic before one of our most recent conferences, and it resulted in like 30 meetings with tier 1 accounts.
Wow.
So way more successful than we've seen with like any other initiative this year.
That's awesome. And I think that validates like buyers are people who want to be known. And so if you know enough about them to basically give a real reason for connecting as people, and in person especially, right? Few people are going to say no. That's kind of why they're going, and it better to get the cold pitch ahead of time and show some planning and intentionality than
Yeah.
Also, another book that validates that is Art of Gathering, where she talks about like how to design coming together as people, and just sort of adhere in what you just said, like this idea that if you're purposeful about connecting with people in person, you can even stack the deck another level. That's like super premium upgrade version of scaling experiments into success.
Yeah.
Wait, Kendall, real quick, how did you know they were going to be at the event? Did you just, it was like a big industry event and you assumed, or did you get the list from your sponsoring?
Yeah, we got the list like 2 weeks ahead of the event, and we just like went through and scrubbed everything. And it was, lucky enough, it was only like 600 folks on the list. So we could get like very, very granular, like what's our previous interactions with them, previous touch points, any sort of like Salesforce notes. And we literally went through and called, anyone on the list who we deemed as like good fit tier 1 prospects.
Sweet.
That's sharp. I'm gonna steal that for sure.
All right, real quick, we got 1 minute left. Anything we're like doing some content planning for 2025 for Demand Collective? We have Stuart Hillhouse from Mutiny coming on in January to talk about their like content marketing playbook, which I think will be really cool. But anything else that's like top of mind? I'll be you just tell me what you want to learn about. I'll go find the people who are really smart at it and create an event out of it and give it to you guys. So anything
I'm always
specific?
curious about the best new developments in AI tooling for marketing. It's hard to keep track of what's getting built, and so it'd be really helpful to have some kind of like growing list or like recommendations, real demos, that kind of stuff. Not like a vendor sponsorship thing, but just like marketers saying. Interesting.
I feel like SEO is changing more and more and more and more and more. And so anything as like content or SEO strategies change with AI going into 2025. That's interesting.
I'll second that one too.
Speaking of channel saturation, I'm terrified of what's going to happen.
Yeah, 100%.
I'd love to hear from someone who has really built out a paid media or paid advertising motion across multiple channels that has seen a lot of success with a limited budget. I would find that, and building a motion from scratch would be really interesting.
What's limited budget?
Like,
give me a number.
Less than 20K a month.
Cool. That would be great, actually. Yeah, we have some stuff about paid ads, but have you seen the one with OmniLab we did a while ago? They're like,
I don't think so.
Okay, it's in our content repository. They walk through like their whole paid ad strategy, so that'll be helpful. But I think doing one for a small budget, earlier stage, would be quite interesting for me too. So, cool. Anything else? Sweet. Just message me if you do. Evan, dude, this is amazing. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Hopefully we can.
Yeah, thanks for the great conversation, guys.
Happy holidays. Talk to you guys soon.
Good.
Bye.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Right.
See y'all.